Hey, it's Wednesday and it's after the coffee. There are some of us who thrive on conflict, and there are those of us who avoid conflict like the plague, right? We want calm, serenity, and we want everybody to think the way we do. But the world doesn't work that way, does it? No. So there are some things that I learned about conflict, and there's a couple of really key points. One is understanding that conflict happens when an individual or a group's needs are not being met. The other thing is that the most effective way of dealing with conflict, and I don't really find myself in either camp in regards to conflict. I don't thrive on it, but I don't really avoid it. What I do is I create a conversation around it. If I see something a certain way and another person sees it completely opposite, then I'll show interest. Really? Tell me more about that. hmm hmm What else? hmm hmm Go on. Is that it? When I ask those questions, I better understand where the other person's coming from. Now, it doesn't mean that I'll agree with them. However, I've found that so many times when we get into the conversation, I understand and I find myself closer to seeing it the way they see it. Now, if I don't, I'll ask questions. So, what you're saying is this, right? I'm checking for understanding to make sure I've got it right. When they say yes, and I have a concern about that, I'll say, okay, so how would you handle this? Or how would you avoid this from being a problem? With that perspective, how is this not an issue? Help me understand that. And I try to say it in a way where I'm not challenging them. And I have to be more self-aware about that because hey, I'm 6'2", I'm a big guy. I could be intimidating. So I have to be really careful and say, that's interesting. I'm very curious. Tell me more. hmm Okay. You see, I think a large part of conflict, and I've heard people actually have arguments, they're both saying the same thing. They're just choosing different words. The argument ends up being about semantics and not about principle. So rather than get on your soapbox and defend your position, because remember, resistance breeds resistance. Boy, you keep going like that, you only end up with a headache, right? So if you take one of those away, you can't have conflict because conflict is two forces coming together. When you create an inquiry, when you are genuinely curious and you have a desire to understand, then you learn. You learn maybe how your beliefs are wrong or your perspective is maybe off kilter a little bit. But regardless, you learn about how another person sees the same thing, but differently. And we bring on our life experiences. That's a big deal, right? When we've got in our head, oh yeah, back in the third grade, da, 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 da. Whatever. We all carry that stuff. That's where our fears come from. To be able to not be fearful, because oftentimes conflict, let's not kid ourselves, conflict comes from our own fear, even if it's a fear of being wrong, because we don't want to be wrong. Nobody wants to be wrong. But you know what? We've also got to embrace the fact that we're constantly learning. We cannot believe always that our way is the only way things can be. And if we invite that conversation, we enrich ourselves with another perspective and we learn. We learn from other people as much as they learn from us. So, as a leader, that's really important. Not to have arguments, not have to have a need to be right, actually being open to the possibility, hey, I could be wrong. Tell me more. I want to know. That's exciting to me to entertain that. And I know I'm not always right. I'm lucky if I'm right 50% of the time. And when I say that, I mean that the picture that I have is only part of a picture. Look through the world like this. Open those blinders up and invite a conversation instead of a conflict. Be genuinely curious as to how people see things the way they see them. At worst, you'll better understand them as a human being. But at best, you'll both walk away enlightened. So that's the after the coffee. Please do me a favor. I love the thumbs up and the hearts. Those are great. But share your own experience with conflict with me down below. And make sure you subscribe, ring the bell, and share this with someone you think might benefit from this. Because knowledge, when we keep it to ourselves, doesn't grow what we want to see as far as change in the world. Share it. And thank you. I will see you guys next Wednesday for After the Coffee. I don't have my coffee with me today. I've got my vitamin water. Sorry, that was not a promo for vitamin water. I'll see you next time. Have a great one.